So, the video you're about to watch is of a man who went into debt because of his social media career. How he got into debt, that is yet to be known. This is why we're going to watch the video, react to it, and see what we can get out of it, what lessons we can learn from it. It also touches on a point that not a lot of people are talking about, is that not everybody go into debt because of consumerism. Some people choose to go into debt because of what it could do for their career or whatever path they choose for their lives. So let's see what he has to say. I'm very curious as to how he got into $75,000 of debt.
I would log into Credit Karma, it will say your net worth is negative 70,000. At some point, it climbed up to even $75,000. Like, I don't think you guys understand how crazy that is, bro. Hello guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Mohammed Bai. I am a model and a content creator living out here in Los Angeles. Originally from Senegambia, West Africa. Yeah, so first of all, I want to start out this video by saying this is not financial advice by any means. Like, this is
Obviously.
not financial advice. This is just me sharing my story and kind of explaining to some of the crazy obstacles I had to go through to get to where I am now. First, I want
Come
to
on,
just start
tell me
out by
about it.
saying all praise to God. You know, honestly, couldn't be here if it wasn't for God. So, but let me give you guys a little bit of a backstory. So I was born and raised in Senegambia region, and I came to New York in 2010. I was living with my
Okay.
family, and then in 2020, I came to LA, and I've been living in LA ever since. You know, like when I think about my journey and kind of like how I got to where I got to now, even when I was younger, when people would always ask me like, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" I always felt stuck. I never knew what to say because I genuinely did not know what I wanted to become when I got older. Like I
That's true. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially people coming out of high school when they're about to transition into adulthood. There's a lot of things that, or voices that are telling them to just go to college, go into the trades, not really giving themselves time to actually explore what they would like to do. Some people would like to go into content creation, some people would like to go into aerospace. But the idea that was pushed by, let's say society, but mostly by our parents, is that we need to go to college, we need to go to school in order to become anything that res- resembles success in life. And clearly, that is not true. People are making money off of social media, and in some of the craziest ways. Some people go to Japan and they just stream their lives and they make money. Not Japan in particular, but like people actually do that. So you don't necessarily need to go to school to be successful. And even if you get a degree that is very sought after, the degree doesn't make you successful, is what you do with it and what it could make, what it could help you accomplish. Let's say it will teach you the basics, but at the end of the day, it is up to you to make use of the degree. The degree doesn't define you, is what you do with it and what you're able to do with it. That's what is most important. But I agree with him, especially at that age. He came very young, new country, new opportunities, obviously, but they didn't tell him, or like he didn't know what he wanted to do, which a lot of people can relate to.
just did not know. Like people would say, "Oh, doctor and lawyer, all of these things," but none of those things really stood out to me. None of those things made me excited or alive. And if you know me, I'm very purpose driven. So like something has to be like exciting for me, or something has to like kind of like call me for me to really like even react to certain things. And so
And that's the feeling you should be looking for when you're looking for something you want to do for the rest of your life. If you go into, let's say, a field that you don't enjoy, or like, let's say, engineering or very, very, very well known majors, and you don't get excited by it, even if you get the degree, even if the education is paid for by your parents, it doesn't matter because you're going to suffer in that field. You're going to come home miserable. You're not going to like it, even if you make millions of dollars and your life is mostly comfortable. Like, even if you make all of that money, you have all of that prestige, if you don't get excited when you get up and you go to work, you're living for other people's expectations, or like you're living up to other people's expectation of what your life should be based off the degree that you have. So when you're choosing that, when you're choosing that major, when you're going into however amount of money, or however amount of debt that you choose to go into, you need to think about it. Some people, I understand, I see you. Some people don't necessarily have that option because they live with a parent or parents that require you to go to school and get an education. Not necessarily for you, but for them. Some of them, they just use it as arm candy. You know how like a guy would just get a girl just to show off to their friends that they could get a girl like that? It's basically the equivalent of arm candy for these parents. Like, you go to any social event with your parents, surrounded by your cousins and then your immediate family, or like family members that you haven't really seen. It becomes more of a competition of like accomplishments. Oh, my son is a lawyer. My son is a doctor. My son is an engineer. It becomes mostly for them, not necessarily for you. It's completely fine, mind you, if you actually enjoy these fields. But I'm talking about the people who are pushed in those fields and they don't necessarily have a choice. Worst of all, the parents who push their children into those fields and have the kids take out loans to get those types of educations. And when they graduate and they realize they can't find a job, I'm talking about the people, I'm not talking about useful degrees, I'm talking about the useless ones. Useless. The ones that don't necessarily give you any opportunity to work. I'm talking about like arts and stuff that you can't, useless degrees. You know what I'm talking about. The ones that say that you should just get any degree and then you should be fine, those parents should be tied to that loan, meaning that they should be making monthly payments because they're the ones that convince their kids, or in some cases force their kids to go into those fields. And now we're stuck. My life is ruined because of you. So when you're making that decision to get debt in order to get an education, think to yourself, and you're not going to know for sure until you actually get into the job, but if there's an inkling of interest, you get excited when you think of these things. Those are the things you need to think about when you're making these decisions. It makes it a lot more digestible. Not that anything would make it digestible completely when you think about $70,000 or $100,000 in loans. These are the little messages that I would like to point out and explain in the video that I'm watching. So it's not necessarily reckless debt, but some calculated debt.
It kind of was like that even when I was in high school, when I was in college. I always felt stuck. Always felt like, man, like none of these career fields that I'm seeing or that were offered in school, none of those things really stuck out to me. None of those things were things that I found myself doing after I graduated, after I finished school. But one thing about me, no matter what I do, I always apply and do my best that I possibly can. So in school, I always tried to over excel. I always was doing the most. I was, president here, I was doing public speak. I was doing so many other things.
Hmm.
just to kind of like stay active and also like to maintain my grades. So I actually graduated college with honors as well. But after
Oh, he finished
graduating
college.
college,
That's
personally, I did not want to go. I did not want to apply for a job. I did not want to apply for a job at all.
hmm.
And I remember a couple of times where I was going to job interviews, like I was literally praying to not get the jobs because I know it was just gonna get me stuck and it was gonna keep me settling. And I
Settling. That's an interesting point. Like he would go to the job interviews, and he would feel like, or he would want the job interview to go bad. But at that point, why even go to the job interview if you want it to fail? Why waste anybody's time or the interviewer's time? Because it takes a lot, and it's not necessarily free to do these interviews. I don't understand why he did that. But he would say that he was settling and he needed to be extraordinary, which is fine. But I think when a lot of people hear this type of thinking, not that it's wrong or right, it's just that people interpret it um, different ways. Like people who are completely comfortable with a 9 to 5. And that's another video I'd like to make, is people complaining about 9 to 5s being like horrible. I think 9 to 5s get a bad rep, but that's besides the point. He feels as if he's settling and he doesn't feel like he will be okay in that job, which is a good sign. Maybe he actually knows what he wants, seemingly. And because of that, he ended up doing social media. But for the people who work 9 to 5s, shout outs to you. Um, Especially blue collar guys. You guys are essential to society, and you don't get enough respect. So respect to you. Um, but the people who work 9 to 5s and they will hear something like this, they feel like they're not living as they should. And what would tend to happen is that people who will listen to this, they will start to adapt the ideals of the people who were they the people who they are listening to. So the problem with that is that you start to compare your stuff, the way you live, the way you structure your life, and start to think that there's something wrong when there's nothing wrong. This is something that you enjoy and you are completely fine. The main thing with any job, regardless if it's social media, regardless if it's a 9 to 5, regardless if you work at the strip club or whatever it may be, do you enjoy the job? Do you feel a sense of purpose? Do you feel a sense of accomplishment whenever you leave your job? Whenever you wake up to go to that job, do you feel anxious? Why am I doing this? Why am I tired? Why do I feel nervous or like I hate this job? Or is it the complete opposite? These are the things that you need to think about, not pay attention to a guy on social media telling you you should live your life this or that way. The beautiful thing about humanity is that we are so diverse in the sense that not not any one person is the same. A person may appear the same in terms of skin color, but likes completely different things. They might like things from other cultures. Predominantly, punk rock, for example, is known to be a white person thing. They there's this stereotype. Even there's even a stereotype that is associated with it being like emo, punk rock, heavy metal, white people music. But I enjoy white people music, or like rock or punk rock. I like those genres. I like blues. I like heavy metal. I like even some pop or hip hop. So the things that is associated with me visually, like people would assume, I like those things. I like the things that people wouldn't assume that I would like. So if you're in a situation and you're hearing things like this, don't worry about it. If you enjoy your life and if you enjoy the way you live, who am I, or who is anybody who has the right to even tell you what your life should look like? That should be your job. Now, people may have their opinions if you ask them or you put it out in the public. and then people are able to comment on it, but that's a different thing. If you are happy, live your life. Resuming.
So after my second job interview that I was praying to not get the job, I was like, yeah, I can't even be wasting my time anymore. And part of me just wanted to, to go to job interviews just so that my parents wouldn't think I'm a failure.
Okay, that
Honestly,
makes sense.
that was
That
really
makes
why.
sense.
And it's crazy because
And that's exactly what I was talking about. You remember before I was saying that it's mostly the parents' parental pressure saying that they should be accomplishing these things, but once you're out there, and I think it's difficult to like fight against your parents, and I think everybody has that argument with their parents where they feel as if their parents is getting in the way of their success and what they would want to do with their life. But I think there's a way of doing it, and if you're lucky, which not everybody is, their parents would understand and give them a chance. But you shouldn't squander it. You should use that time to actually look for something that you would want to do.
been like, bro, I was grinding so much from college. Like I actually started posting on YouTube back in 2016, 2017. It's when I first started on YouTube. I was grinding, like I was grinding so much. Like I was, juggling schoolwork, YouTube, modeling practice. I was doing so much. And then also at some point I started a share butter business. I was always doing something because I always saw myself living like a life that I like had vision for myself. I didn't want to
Okay.
just live a regular life. And I knew that like there was nothing that anybody can say to stop me from, or anybody could do to stop me from achieving like what I saw was possible in my head. And so graduated college with like maybe $30,000 in student loan debt, and not going for
Lucky you or
for a
unlucky
job.
for you, that
The,
was
the loan is just
it was 30,000, but like other people I've seen like 100,000. Like these numbers don't. It's sad to say, but hearing these numbers, they don't really phase me anymore. Like you hear this stuff all the time, 200, 300. The highest I ever saw in terms of debt, like not like investment debt, but like debt was like almost $700,000, which is insane. But like he graduated with 30, so that's not too bad. I still have no idea what he went for, but I don't think it's anything crazy like that. I don't know.
I mean, before that I had racked up some even more credit card debt before that, but that was kind of like when they first started. I just started, kind of doubling down, and then next thing you know, the camera equipment, the lights, the everything. I'm just like, boom, credit card, credit card, credit card. Because one thing for sure that I knew about myself is that I trusted myself to be able to dig myself out of the hole that I was putting myself in. Like I promised you, bro. Like imagine, it was some point I was literally $70,000 in negative equity. You could say, like I would log into Credit Karma, it will say your net worth is negative 70,000. At some point, it climbed up to even $75,000.
So that is the crux of the video, and what I wanted to get to is the amount of debt that he did, got himself into because of his dream and because of his ambition. I don't think this is completely new. A lot of YouTubers or like social media influencers have done this. They feel as if they need the latest gear in order to accomplish what they want. They don't necessarily believe in used stuff. They need the brand new stuff to actually do stuff. It's more, from what I've noticed, it's more prominent with like car YouTubers. They need their entire thing is based around having the best mods on your car. Like smaller YouTubers, they would put everything on Afterpay, Firm, Klarna, and then they would delay the payments. And when the video is posted, then they would reap the rewards. But a lot of the arguments around people being in debt, a lot of the times is not necessarily people intentionally or like spending irresponsibly, like going on trips, buying a whole bunch of clothes. Some of the times it's people who have a vision, and they don't necessarily have the cash to accomplish the goals that they would want to. So they resort to putting themselves into debt. But the problem with that is it really goes by like fast. And the thing is, if your entire business model when it comes to like social media, from what I've seen and the little experience that I've seen, is that if your idea is good enough, your gear does not matter. Yes, if you are upgrading your gear for a specific reason, for example, vlogging, you can't use a generic a digital camera with a mechanical shutter, right? You need to see if you're in frame or if you're in focus. So that upgrade makes sense, but you don't necessarily need the most expensive stuff. What I find fun, I'm not saying it's applies to everybody, is that with the gear that I have, I figure out a way to make it work for me, and then I focus mostly on the content and the structure of my video, what I'm trying to say. So this guy dug himself in a hole because he wanted to live an extraordinary life. I'm not saying anything is wrong with that, but like you need to do it cautiously, because his spending escalated really, really quickly. And by the time you know it, he was in a hole collecting interest on top of that. I don't imagine he was like making um, basic payments, and then the interest just started to multiply and got out of control. So there's nothing wrong with making a move that when you believe in yourself and you have a vision, you should take it. You feel as if your life isn't what you would want it to be, make the necessary steps to change it. You don't necessarily need to go into debt in order to be great or be what you would want yourself to be in the future. That's it.